Thank you very much, Carlo. Let me start by saying how delighted I am to be here in Lombardy, in Milan. I bring the greetings from the OECD, our Secretary General, Education Director, and of course all of our staff. OECD has 34 member countries. We stand for democratic and market economy. Our motto is better policies for better lives. OECD is an organization for economic collaboration and development. Our focus is on sustainable economic growth, but we also see education as a key pillar of that growth. I will speak about the reviews of higher education in regional and city developments, and then I will show some of the key conclusions for Lombardy. You have each, I hope, received this book. It has a wealth of recommendations, and we hope that some of them will be helpful for you. Sono molto contenta di essere a Milano, capitale di economia italiano, della creatività e alcune ottime università. Di tutte le regioni studiate, la Lombardia rappresenta spicca per la sua creatività e per l'imprenditorialità. The governments throughout the OECD area are wanting to make higher education and universities drivers of economic growth and engine of development. They are taking steps to make higher education institutions more responsive and more accountable to the society. This trend is happening everywhere throughout the OECD economies. But what we quite often see is that many universities, despite that very high quality research, number of publications, academic richness, still stay in their ivory towers. They sometimes remain the last bastions of conservatism in many ways. There are inefficiencies and outdated management systems. So what we try to do in the OECD is that we have created a tool which can mobilize higher education for economic, social and cultural development in their immediate localities, cities and regions. And these reviews of higher education in regional and city development are also designed in a manner which can bring different stakeholders together to identify strategic goals and then start to work towards them. So what these reviews try to do is not only to identify what is good in the higher education institutions, what are they good for? Are they good for journals, publications, individual academics' career progress, or are they also good for the society? These reviews and the review of Lombardy is not an isolated thing. We started in 2005, and since that we have reviewed more than 30 cities and regions in over 20 countries. We started in 2005, 2007 with 14 regions in 12 countries. There was a very strong concentration in Europe, and 9 of the reviews took place in Europe and 5 of them in Nordic countries. In the second round, we did an isolated thing in Russia. In the second round, we widened our scope a bit and moved also to United States, some of the emerging economies. And we are now moving ahead. If you look at this map carefully, you can see that there is a very strong concentration. Why do we do so much work, for example, in Spain? For the simple reason that there has been demand, and the devolution in Spain has been very highly developed. So the system in Catalonia is quite different from the system in Andalusia, and now also the Basque Country is interested. Why do we do a lot of work in US-Mexico region? For the simple fact that despite the violence, the drugs, the problems there is a huge growth going on also, which now has been disguised by the economic recession. These reviews are also useful for the regions because they will help you to identify good practices nurtured elsewhere. There are particularly 4 reports that I would like to draw your attention to. Victoria in Australia with Melbourne, City of Berlin in Germany, Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and Catalonia. Each of these regions bears some similarities with this region, and I think that they would be useful for benchmarking. What does OECD do when we review the regions? First of all, as Carlo explained, there is a self-evaluation process, and this very much looks into the 4 key aspects. We look into research, developments and innovation in higher education institutions and in the region in general, and to what extent that helps the region grow. We'll look into human capital and skills development, and this is not only about higher education but the entire educational system, because higher education is very dependent on what happens at the earlier layers of education, and we have just heard how Lombardy does very well in OECD PISA studies, as an exception, I think, for the rest of Italy. But we also look into what is going on in terms of lifelong learning. Is Lombardy and the higher education institutions geared towards the demographic change here? Does this system serve also the aging population and the migrant population, which in about 10 years will be the pool of your students in higher education institutions? We also look into social, cultural and environmental development and the regional capacity building. Regional capacity building means not only what IRER, Éupolis and the regional government is doing here, but also whether the higher education institutions have the capacity to collaborate so that their full potential is mobilized for the benefit of the region. The reviews follow a common OECD template. First of all, there is a background report which has been prepared by the people in the region, and we just heard who were those very key people who collaborated in this effort. I would like to give my sincere thanks to IRER and now Éupolis for all that collaboration, and also to Karosecki, who was chairing the regional steering committee, and Paolo Trivellato, who's the reason why we are actually here, because of one discussion in Helsinki in another international conference where the universities met. We had this idea, and you were kind enough to take it and make it fly. After the self-evaluation report has been finalized, the OECD collects international experts, and we come here for 1 week review visit. The review team of Lombardy had members. I was leading the team. There were members from OECD, Andrea Hofer, who is in local economic and employment. There was Patrick Dubal, who is in regional development. Giuseppe Roncesvalles, who was a national expert. Helena Nazare, who's now the president of the European University Association. Susan Christofferson, who comes from Cornell University. These experts have interviews with a wide range of stakeholders, and after that we put together a report based on all the materials that we receive from the region, the expert contributions, and also OECD work. And after that there are dissemination. We hope to see a lot more disseminations with the universities, because we believe that the key is really in universities, in mobilizing them. Lombardy has been a particularly interesting case for us. It is the most populous region in Italy, which in itself is a source of growth. It is the most prosperous region in Italy. 1/5 of the national economy is here, and its GDP per capita is 33% higher than the European average. Its prosperity is very much related to the diverse economy and the long-standing industrial strength. There are manufacturing strengths here that many other regions are extremely jealous still, and there is still time to change and transform this so that it will be even more competitive in the global economy. You have arts and design sector, which is the envy of the world, financial capital in Milan, and agriculture, which is the most productive in Europe. All this has also contributed to the fact that Lombardy is attractive to immigration flows. And it is today the most diverse region in Italy, having 1 out of 4 documented immigrants in the country. We know from elsewhere that immigrant population can be a great potential source of innovation, and here it's also clearly a buffer against the challenges of demographic change in general. You have large higher education sector, and some of the most diverse institutions in Italy, and some universities have very large research budgets. The economic diversity and the continued demand for regional products has made this region resilient in the face of the economic recession, which has hitting very hard the country in general. Unemployment so far remains still relatively low, and it remains relatively low, of course, also because of SME-based economy, which employs bulk of the people and also is less prone to lay out people during the time of recession. But Lombardy faces critical challenges in maintaining its global position. And here I go back to the manufacturing. Not everything can be service-oriented in this world. Success under the new manufacturing model requires differentiation, more intense knowledge use, and access to high-level skills. And here, clearly, the education sector plays a key role. I'd just like to show you a couple of figures to put Europe, OECD countries, in the global context. In 2011, OECD countries had not recovered to the pre-crisis levels of outputs, but the emerging economies continued to surge. Government debt is reaching historical heights in many OECD countries. Italy is the third on the left. So faced with this global competition and economic crisis, we looked into basically 3 key challenges for Lombardy.